Hey guys, it's Mike 1013 for FlopTurnRiver. Today I want to talk about times when you flop a monster and maybe considering slow playing it. Now there are some people who slow play way too often, who don't want to lose customers, who think that slow playing is the best way to get value from their hands. On the other hand, there are a lot of players who perhaps have been burned once or twice by slow playing, and they conclude that you should virtually never slow play, that you don't want to give free cards, that you don't want people to suck out on you. The truth is somewhere in between these two extremes. While you do need a good reason to slow play, there are certainly situations when slow playing is by far your best option. So let's take a look at some of the reasons why you would want to slow play a hand. If the flop's non-threatening, or there aren't very many scare cards that can come on the turn, that will make slow playing better than if the board is wet or there are a lot of scare cards that can come. Remember, the whole point of slow playing is that you're going to play passively in the hopes of making a larger pot when your hand is best. If there are a lot of draws on board, two bad things can happen if you slow play. One, your opponent can suck out and now you don't have the best hand anymore. But perhaps more often, your opponent might have a marginal hand that he's willing to put some money in the pot. But when the scare card comes on the turn, he's no longer willing to do so. So generally, the drier the board, the better it is for slow playing. A second consideration is in multi-way pots, where there's a bet in front of you and you're deciding, do you want to call or do you want to raise? If there's a fish who may call behind you, that's an additional reason to slow play. If you raise, then you might risk knocking the fish out of the pot and then just getting heads up against a reg, which is not the ideal situation. You generally want to take a few risks if doing so means that there's a greater chance of a fish putting in his money dead or drawing very thin. If the stacks of you and your opponents are such that you can slow play and still get the money in by the river, then that's an argument for slow playing. If, on the other hand, the pot is very small in relation to the size of your stacks, then you might consider raising or betting in order to get as much money in as you can. If making an aggressive action will give away the strength of your hand and cause your opponents to fold, then that's an argument in favor of slow playing. If, on the other hand, an aggressive action is expected of you and will not tell your opponents much about the strength of your hand, then you should go ahead and bet or raise. So, for example, if you were the pre-flop raiser and it checks to you on the flop, you could go ahead and c-bet without worrying about giving away the strength of your hand. They will not think you have a monster if you just make a standard c-bet. Let's take a look at a couple of example hands here, where we flop a monster and are considering slow playing. Okay, so our first hand here happens at a 25 NL full ring cash game. We have 10s in the cutoff, there's a limp ahead of us, and we go ahead and raise. We get 2 calls behind, and the original limper folds. And now here we flop middle set, and a fishy looking guy donk bets 1/4 of the pot into us. So let's look at the board. The board's pretty draw heavy, and there are a lot of scare cards that could come on the turn, and there's a lot of cards that can complete a draw for our opponents that can come on the turn. At the same time, there's no fish behind us to act. The guy behind us looks kind of like a reg. If we do call here, he's unlikely to make huge errors. And another thing to bear in mind is if we look at the size of the remaining stacks and the size of the pot, there's still about a good 5 times the size of the pot remaining in our stacks. So here I think this is a bad spot to slow play. So this is a spot where I would just go ahead and raise here and not try to slow play at all. Okay, let's move on to the next hand. In this hand, we have pocket fours under the gun of a 100 NL cash game. So we open and get called in 2 spots. We get to see a 3-way flop here, and we flop bottom set. The big blind donk shoves the rest of his stack into us, and it's on us. So let's take a look at this flop. It's not very drawy, and there are not a lot of scare cards that can come on the turn. There is a flush draw, but that's the only real draw possible aside from gut shots. And when you consider that most people who are playing suited cards will have an ace of suit, the fact that the ace of hearts is on the board further reduces the chance that our opponents will have a flush draw. So let's look at who's left to act behind us. He's a 33-10. He doesn't look to be a very good player. I think if we just call here, that will induce him to make a lot of mistakes, either by calling with maybe middle pair or, top pair with the bad kicker, or he might even shove some type of hand. Maybe he might shove his own draw as a bluff. And if we do just call here, if we look at the size of the pot already, which it's about $28 even before we act, if we call, it's going to be over $40, and if the other guy calls as well, it's going to be more than $50 in the middle, and we'll only have about $90 left behind. So just calling here will not prevent us from getting all the money in the pot by the river. So here I think this is a very good spot to slow play, and so I'd go ahead here and just call. Thanks for watching, guys.